I knew nothing about Bill Russell, the great basketball player and civil rights activist, before I read about him on the pages of RevCom after he passed away recently. But after that, I went on a bit of a jag learning about him. And around this same time, a friend and comrade of mine reread an essay from Bob Avakian in the book Basics titled A Leap of Faith and A Leap to Rational Knowledge. Two very different kinds of leaps, two radically different worldviews and methods. And we wrangled with this some together. So these two things together got me thinking more deeply about the unparalleled scientific communist leadership that Bob Avakian provides. What a game changer this is for humanity's ability to get free, and the importance of all of us who want to contribute to that process, consciously and continually deepening our ability to apply the same consistently scientific method and approach that BA models, while bringing forward more and more others to do the same. Let me explain. After reading about Bill Russell at revcom.us, I was particularly interested in what Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had written about him as well. Then I followed the links in Jabbar's pieces, then a few more links, and later I listened to an old interview that Terry Gross did with Russell on NPR. As the pieces on RevCom noted, Russell played a tremendous role in speaking up against racism and oppression throughout his life. But the biggest thing I learned about Russell as a player was that he was not only an incredible athlete, but he was always the smartest guy on the court. He'd play mind games.
West all alone. Look at Russell come down. And what a play by Russell!
He would psych them that every time they would go to the middle, they'd look, where's Russell?
Russell blocked shots without blocking them because people wouldn't take shots because they were afraid to take them. He changed the whole game.
One star player recalled how he took a shot and Russell blocked him. He took the shot again and Russell blocked him again. By the third time, this guy missed the shot because he was busy looking around to see where Russell was.
I went around my man, go to him for a layup, and he blocked a couple of shots on me. And then the next time I got around him, I missed a layup looking for him.
Russell played for the Boston Celtics from 1956 to 1969 and was a player-coach for the last 3 of those years. Apparently, the great rivalry of that time was between Wilt Chamberlain, who was an aggressive and record scorer, and Russell, who was the ultimate team player, more known for his intellectual mastery of the game. I watched the two of them interviewed together. Russell was extremely precise in breaking down how he approached play against Chamberlain.
I could never play him the same way 2 games in a row because it would not work. And so through the whole time we played against each other, every game was different.
In contrast, Chamberlain was far less theoretical and even teased Russell for being so intellectual in his answers.
He talks long on his points.
When Terry Gross asked Russell how he drilled his team when he coached the Celtics, Russell started by explaining an exercise where they stretched their arms out to the side slowly to identify precisely how far their peripheral vision extended. Then they drilled fast break rebounds where he'd jump, grab the ball, and throw it to someone in the right color jersey who would know exactly where the outer limits of Russell's peripheral vision reached. This way, Russell never had to turn his head before passing. This enabled them to break faster than anyone else. The other teams couldn't keep up. Russell said this cut down on how many shots he personally could score because he'd rarely make it down to the other end of the court before his teammates had scored, usually in less than 6 seconds. Terry noted that Russell was an incredible jumper, but that Chamberlain was a full 5 inches taller. So how did he guard Chamberlain? Russell started by saying that because he was left-handed and Chamberlain was right-handed, Russell didn't have to reach across his body to block him, so that gave him back 3 inches. Then he broke down how you can jump higher when you're blocking than you can when you're shooting, because when you're shooting, the jump becomes part of and is constrained by using its power to project into the shot. So that gave Russell 3 more inches back. All of a sudden, he had the advantage. But Russell stressed he could never play Wilt the same way for long, or Wilt would catch on and overpower him. So Russell never tried to block every shot. Sometimes he'd block. Sometimes he'd just move in close to try to force Wilt to adjust his stance before shooting. Russell would aim for something as slight as forcing Wilt to pivot a mere 2 inches, enough to throw off Wilt's shot and make him miss maybe half the time, but not enough for Wilt to pick up on why he was missing more than usual. This would get inside Wilt's head and throw him off further. You get the idea. So how does all this relate to where I started? To Bob Avakian's leadership and his essay on how people learn and know about the world. In his essay on 2 leaps, B.A. breaks down how one can make a leap from knowledge that is derived from perception, that is literally what one can see or directly experience, to rational knowledge, that is identifying the patterns in what is perceived, and identifying the essential character of different things and the underlying dynamics that hold them together beyond what is outwardly apparent. An example of this that B.A. gives is how, to someone unfamiliar with the game, football can at first seem like a bunch of guys just running around, running into each other in funny outfits. But after observing it for a while, gathering perceptual knowledge, and identifying the patterns, one can make a leap to rational knowledge, to understanding what the rules of football are, and to understanding the game as a whole. After giving other examples and showing how this applies in all realms of reality, B.A. makes this point. Quote, "The understanding of reality that is gained through the leap from perceptual to rational knowledge becomes, in turn, the basis, the foundation from which further perceptual knowledge that is accumulated is analyzed and synthesized to make further leaps of this kind, from perceptual to rational knowledge yet again and then again. So the acquiring of knowledge by individuals and by society and humanity overall is not a one-time thing, but an ongoing process." End quote. Wrestling with this essay from B.A. at the same time that I was learning about Bill Russell made me very conscious of how much science Russell was bringing to bear all the time to the whole game. He didn't just make the leap from perceptual to rational knowledge once to grasp the rules of the game, or just make a collection of further leaps to grasp certain strategies or certain plays. But all the time, he was bringing to bear the full framework of what he understood about the game as a whole, about the various dynamics, about the different particular teams, about the different particular players, about different particular plays, and about how all this came together, and what was key at any given time to drive towards his overarching goal of leading his team to win. Certainly, in the moment, Russell was doing all of this more or less reflexively, but his ability to do that was rooted in having deeply internalized all of that theory and developed the ability at a very high level to bring it to bear when thinking on his feet. This parallels how in the New Communism, Bob Avakian takes apart and breaks down all the scientific work and the method that was the basis on which he was able to pivot in the moment when some dogmatic nationalist crashed a talk he was giving back in the 1970s. They raised up a map of the states where black people were concentrated in an effort to challenge what B.A. was putting forward about how the liberation of black people was bound up with the communist revolution in this country. But rather than being thrown off by this, B.A. was able to utilize their map to further break down the major changes in where black people mostly lived, having moved through the Great Migration from the rural countryside in the South, where they had largely been sharecroppers, into the cities and urban areas mainly as proletarian workers at that point. And B.A. used this to make an even deeper case for what this revealed about the revolution that's needed. At one point, B.A. even asked these nationalists to hold their map up a little higher so he could make this point even more clear to those who were gathered. To get the full example, you really have to read it in The New Communism. It's in chapter 4, and it is worth it. But the point here is that this is a great example of the art of extremely high-level communist leadership. It's filled with intangibles and a certain kind of poetry on the basis of being deeply rooted in science. It's an example of the tremendous confidence and creativity and daring and real optimism on that scientific foundation. The same thing applies to B.A.'s leadership in an ongoing way. If you look over the outline at the back of The New Communism, you'll see a breakdown of all the major dimensions of the new communism that B.A. has forged. Each of these is important in its own right, but they're also not static. They're not merely proofs that the system cannot be reformed and needs to be overthrown and replaced with a radically different system, though they certainly do prove this. These breakthroughs are also part of the operational theoretical framework that B.A. applies in an ongoing way to analyzing the world and how it can be changed. All of this, for example, is what has enabled him to see in an unparalleled way the depth of the crisis that this system is currently in, and how this has given rise to splits within the ruling class that cannot be resolved on the terms that have held this system together for nearly 150 years. This is what has enabled him to see the explosiveness of what is being fought out today in a concentrated way around women's right to abortion, whether women will be enslaved or emancipated. This is what has enabled Bob Avakian to analyze that this is a rare time when revolution is more possible. This is what has enabled him to lay out a roadmap for wrenching something truly emancipating, a real revolution out of this situation that is right now accelerating towards something terrible, and so much more. In this light, there's tremendous importance for all of us who want to contribute to the revolution that is necessary to emancipate humanity, to not only continually dig into and deepen our grasp of the new communism that Bob Avakian has forged in all its particular dimensions and as a whole, but most of all, to take up the same method and approach that he does, to continually develop our ability to apply this science in a living, operational, and ongoing way, to do this collectively, and to increasingly bring forward waves of new revolutionary leaders capable of the same. So one final point about Bill Russell. Back in 2001, when Terry Gross interviewed him, she asked Russell if he could still jump. Russell explained that his body doesn't move like it used to. But, he said, I still jump. I jump for joy. And he went into how important it is to never give up jumping for joy. And this, too, relates to the leadership of BA and to the kind of world and beauty that the revolution he is fighting for will bring into being.